Professor, I was wondering if I could talk to you about the study guide?
Ugh, not another typo. It was late. I was tired. Why can't you students leave me alone during my office hours? It's my me time.
Oh no, it's not that. It's just that in the Modern Affinity study guide, you've written one line and it says, play your entire opening hand on turn 1 and hope for the best.
Right. Modern Affinity.
Well, not really. I'm actually writing my dissertation on Affinity, and I've been studying it for a long time. There's a lot more to it than just dumping your whole hand on turn 1.
These are really meant as introductory guides. I can't go into excessive detail about every deck ever.
But your Modern Burn study guide is 85 pages long.
It takes a true connoisseur to appreciate all the nuances and details to mono-red burn.
And your guide for the best pencil to use for keeping track of your life total is 198 pages.
Most people think it's the number 2 pencil that's the best. But it's not. Eh? Alright, I'm going to level with you. I know nothing about Modern Affinity other than the fact that it runs only Affinity cards.
Actually, Modern Affinity only plays one Affinity card.
Oh no, I know nothing about Modern Affinity.
You've got to help me. It's impossible for me to learn new things. I'm a professor. I know nothing. How does this deck even work?
Well, Affinity is an artifact-based combo deck. It is often misinterpreted as an aggro deck, but dumping your hand and swinging with all the little creatures is actually rarely the best strategy. It is called Affinity after the mechanic, but actually only contains one Affinity card these days, Thoughtcast. It contains many more metalcraft cards, so many people call it robots these days. I'm showing off the Ensoul variant, which is a bit more vulnerable to removal, but has a lot of potential for explosive wins. The main business cards in this deck are Ensoul Artifact, Arcbound Ravager, and Cranial Plating. If you can resolve one of these cards, you are usually pretty well off. This deck also relies heavily upon manlands like Inkmoth Nexus and the Etched Champion. Etched Champion gets protection from all colors as soon as metalcraft is active, so it is almost always nearly unkillable and unblockable. It's just an excellent guy, but he fits in pretty high on the curve at 3 mana, so we're only running 3 of him. Arcbound Ravager is the main combo engine in the deck. He allows you to save your dudes from removal by turning them into useful +1/+1 counters, and also gives pseudo-evasion by allowing you to squeeze damage through by abusing his sacrifice and modular abilities. The main mistake I see people make is playing this guy too soon and getting him removed before he can be relevant. Ensoul Artifact is a new piece for this deck, but I think it is very strong. Many people run less than 4 of these because they often open you up for a 2-for-1 when you're going for the turn 2 Ensoul. However, if they can't answer this card, it often just says GG, as a flyer beats in for 5 every turn or an indestructible problem gets created with an Ensouled Darksteel Citadel. Cranial Plating is the third all-star of this deck. Because you're playing a deck with 1 to 3 cards that are not artifacts, this card almost always makes your creatures huge. Furthermore, the ability to change who it is equipped to at instant speed gives it some very powerful pseudo-evasion, similar to Arcbound Ravager. It initially seems like a bit of a non-bow with Arcbound, as sacking your artifacts will shrink the bonus, but they actually do buff each other in a slight way, and it's also good to diversify your threats. If they answer one, the other is always a great backup plan. Steel Overseer and Master of Ethereum are basically the lords of this deck, but unlike in Merfolk or many other tribal strategies, I actually feel that they are among the weakest cards. Steel Overseer is a removal magnet, and for good reason. If he goes unanswered, he will almost certainly win the game. But as a 1/1 that doesn't do anything for a full turn, you often have a better card to spend 2 mana on. All of the business cards I mentioned earlier are 2 converted mana cost, and all of them can start doing stuff the turn they come out. Master of Ethereum turns into a big guy and gives all of your guys +1/+1, but the deck has no way to give him evasion, so he rarely beats in for very much damage. The most relevant thing is giving an Inkmoth Nexus a +1/+1. Thoughtcast is the only card with the Affinity keyword in the deck, which is why some people now call Affinity robots. It allows you to draw 2 cards for a single blue mana most of the time. Classic 2-for-1 and a solid card. Galvanic Blast is the only removal spell in the deck, but it is potent, almost always dealing 4 damage to the relevant creature, or often to your opponent's face. In this deck, it is just a more powerful lightning bolt, which is saying a lot. Ornithopter and Memnite are simply combo enablers. They are artifacts which you can cast for no mana, so they can activate your Opal on turn 1 and allow for some explosive plays. Ornithopter is also a decent target for Ensoul or Cranial Plating, and they're both really fine for most of your combo enablers. Signal Pest is basically the backup plan. If they've answered all of your business cards like Ensoul, Ravager, and Plating, Pest gives you a chance to win with pure beatdown. He makes your Ornithopters, Vault, Scourge, and Manlands twice as relevant, which is pretty huge, and in multiples he just gets stronger. Springleaf Drum and Mox Opal allow you to generate colored mana, and they allow you to accelerate out your threats very quickly. Other than Glimmer Void, these are the only ways to generate blue for Ensoul and Thoughtcast, and red for Galvanic Blast, as well as black for moving the Cranial Plating at instant speed. Furthermore, these are both excellent Ensoul targets later in the game, because your opponent cannot respond with a Lightning Bolt or a similar ability to remove the creature before the Ensoul hits. This means that they need hard destruction or a path to deal with the threat. Blinkmoth Nexus is an evasive guy who is hard to destroy because he turns into a land during your opponent's turn. One thing that many people do not realize is that the ability on this card actually allows you to pump Inkmoth Nexus, which is a Blinkmoth creature itself. Inkmoth Nexus almost makes the business card status. It wins a lot of games by swinging him once or twice for 1 or 2 damage and then going huge with either Plating or Ravager when the opponent gives it an opening. Evasive Infect guys should not be underestimated. Side note, Ensoul also works on this guy, but falls off when he turns back into a land. Dumping several artifacts on turn 1, including a Mox Opal, can allow you to win on turn 2 with Affinity if you have Ensoul on an Inkmoth. Darksteel Citadel is an artifact land. Overpowered. Most of these are banned in Modern. It's great to have another 0 mana cost combo enabler that generates mana. Being indestructible also makes it a great target for Ensoul. I have 2 Thoughtseize in the sideboard that come out against combo strategies. If they rely heavily upon a single card or a combination of cards, Thoughtseize is one of the most powerful forms of disruption you can run in your deck. Although there isn't much black in this deck other than the Cranial Plating, it is rather easy to generate black mana. I know, I said I didn't like Steel Overseer that much, but here you see 2 additional copies in the board. It is actually really good in some slower, grindier matchups. Lots of lists even run them in the main and have the Etched Champions in the sideboard. This is just a matter of preference and an adjustment for the meta that I have seen at competitive events. The Ethersworn Canonist just wins several games and can also be quite good in others. Generally, these come in against Storm and other such combo decks. It also shuts down the Jeskai combo deck very efficiently. One of the best decks in the current meta, post-Dig-Through time, is Splinter Twin. Torpor Orb is there mainly to beat Splinter Twin, but is also excellent against Birthing Pod. Grafdigger's Cage is just the best against graveyard strategies, and I'll happily bring it in if I see Snapcasters or other shenanigans going on. Ancient Grudge and Hercules are mainly in the sideboard for the mirror match. If you play Affinity, you will play the mirror in competitive events, and the match will almost always be decided on who has the better sideboard hate. Another alternative that I have run in the past is Spellskite. Spellskite is another great piece of hate for Twin, and is quite good against many other decks. It's quite good in the mirror as well. This is actually one of the best sideboard hate cards against Affinity, but few people realize it. It can redirect Ensoul, and it can redirect Arcbound Ravager's modular trigger, and it can also block Etched Champion. It is a real beating, but a lot of people will fail to bring it in against you even in competitive environments. So remember, this is just one of many Affinity variants. There are a lot of options with this deck. When you're playing with your friends at your local game store, you might notice that other cards work better for you. That's great. That's when you need to change the deck. Many people are playing Chalice of the Void. I saw a variant that runs Frogmite, which is another Affinity card. There's also a pretty good argument for Ghostfire Blade. I haven't seen anybody running that, but it would be very interesting to try. It's important to keep changing your deck, keep trying it, keep smashing games with your friends and with other people at your game shop. Just figure out what works for you and build on that. You can't just take this deck list and go win a tournament with it. It's possible, but it's not likely. What you need to do is figure out what works best for you and adjust the deck so that it is absolutely perfect for your environment.